let's get back to the winners and losers column.
Mm.
In a way, United States is trying to sort of monetize its assets like never before. I'll give you a simple example. In its column, right, in its assets column, what is it pricing for the amount of gold that's there in Fort Knox? The pittance, like $30 or 30, whereas right now it's $3,500.
$42.22 an ounce. The Fed holds
$42.
80.
Yeah.
Holds 8,133.5 tons of gold on its balance sheet at $11.04 billion. Current marketable value is close to $760 billion or $780 billion.
So this is just one instance, viewers, where the assets column in the United States government is sort of out of whack, let's say. And this new move perhaps is trying to right that. So somebody was making money off of this. That person is now going to be losing. So Tom, in your opinion, who are the biggest losers? Because I'm seeing a lot of pushback from some countries, especially one country that has 2 letters for its initials, which is,
you know exactly where it's the United Kingdom.
Yes.
It's the United Kingdom. It is ultimately it's what we like to know as City of London. It's the square mile City of London, because it's their system that we've been running, that the world has been running for quite a long time, and they're at the heart of that system in that they still control a tremendous amount and settle most of, or a great portion of the foreign exchange conversions that happen around the world. The Great British Pound is still one of the big trade settlement currencies in that it settles most of the Forex transactions. So I invoked Ripple earlier. I don't know if you guys know anything about XRP, but XRP is effectively a liquidity token where if I've got Canadian dollars and you've got Indian rupees and I want to buy, linen shirts from India and I've got Canadian dollars, how do I get them? Well, I go to your website and I go and buy a bunch of shirts, and I put my credit card in, my credit card goes in as Canadian dollars, gets converted into Indian rupees, sent to you so that you get paid, and then I get shirts. And then when you want to buy Molson beer from me and ship it halfway across the world, not that I have any understanding why anyone would ever want to ship Molson of all things halfway across the world, but here's our example. Here's our ridiculous example. You've got to take Indian rupees, put in your credit card, send them over, get them converted into Canadian dollars. You get the Molson, I get the linen shirts. Bob's your uncle, everyone's happy. Well, the person who's really happy is that the conversion cost of that is anywhere from 3 to 8%. And the intermediary token that's used in this transaction is the British pound.
Wow.
By the British pound. So the Canadian, the bank in between converts from Canadian dollars into British pounds, then from British pounds into Indian rupees, because the British banking system's all over the world and they have relationships everywhere. And that's the flow. So the money flows through City of London, liquefying and keeping the pound relatively strong, far stronger than the British economy. You would think, just by looking at the macro elements of the British economy, you're like, why is this thing so strong? It's because it's needed to settle all of this global trade. Because a lot of the things like shipping insurance and other things all flow through London as well. So there's a low friction associated with that. The Thomas Cooks of the world need to go away. Every time you get off an airport somewhere in another country in the world, there will be an agency, there will be a Thomas Cook office right there to happily exchange your currency into the local currency and charge you out, anywhere from 6 to 15%, depending on their proclivities of the day. They're going to give you the worst exchange rate you've ever seen in your entire life. You can pull it up on your phone and go, well, that's just what you have to pay, sir. And you don't have any choice because there's nobody else to deal with. Now, your credit cards, right? Visa's in there for a couple of percent doing this work, and other people are in there doing it, but they're doing, a couple of percent on every transaction in the world. Those payment layers are changing rapidly. Ripple says, hey, I can do this. I can take the place of the British pound, and I can do it for a penny. And I can do it in 3 seconds. Settled, done on the blockchain or in the distributed ledger, done. No no 3-day settlement, no pending, blah, blah, none of that. All that friction gone. The world is changing. The way we're going to do international trade is changing. And you have to wrap your head around now is what the governments will be doing is guiding those things, those payments through certain channels, through certain systems. And they are going to bless some systems versus other systems. I think it's pretty clear that the United States is looking to usurp City of London as the forex exchange capital of the world. Why do you think they're trying to put a card-carrying communist in charge of New York City? Like, really? We can't see you? Like, are you nuts? Like, it's right there. Then you go and check into the guy's background and like, yeah, he's like, he's got huge ties to all the usual suspects. So XRP is the liquidity token. Ripple Labs is the company. They're in the process of being blessed by the American government to be the payment layer. Japan's already using Ripple. 85% of the Japanese banks already use the Ripple network in order to do international trade settlement. So like it's already happening. So the question is now the rush is on to control that space and to control the market share in that space. And I can tell you that I'm right about this because I was watching a very illuminating panel between 5 of the world's most prominent central bankers. Well, 4 of them and the guy from South Korea. I don't know why he was there, but Andrew Bailey of the Bank of England. This was at the ECB yesterday. Christine Lagarde of the ECB, Jerome Powell of the Federal Reserve, Kazuo Ueda of the Bank of Japan, and then Chairman Yi or Ri or whatever from South Korea. And I still don't know why I'm literally like, why would he be there? Why not, the guy from the Swiss National Bank or who's ever in charge of the Singapore National Bank or Hong Kong, somebody like an important one. That's not South Korea. No offense to South Koreans in the audience, but that's just reality. Like we're not even talking the same friggin' sport here between those 4 countries, right? The EU, the US, Japan, and England. And when asked about stable coins, the 3 answers of the 3 banks that mattered, the US, the ECB, and the Bank of England, were very interesting because they're all very different. Andrew Bailey, mumbling slovenly into his armpit because he couldn't even be bothered to even look at the people he was talking to, pontificated in his best upper crust, limey midwittery, saying, oh, well, we don't even know if they're, these things are even meet the test of being currencies or money or not, and blah, 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 and all of this like nonsense. Like, yeah, okay, got it. Christine Lagarde, very illuminatingly said, I view money as a public good, and it's the job of the government and the central bank to manage all public goods, and that what we should really be fearing is the rise of private money. That's no shock. The ECB is like, and the European Union are singularly hostile to anything that is not their euro and their impending digital euro. Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve's like, it's happening. We're passing the Stable and the Genius Acts. We're putting regulations up. We're working with the federal government at the Fed to, write the regulations and putting these things in motion. We tried working with the Biden administration about this, what I like to call the Biden junta about this. Got nowhere because Elizabeth Warren was, running roughshod over the entire country and in effect. And then the libertarians in the audience were all blaming the Fed for everything. While meanwhile, Powell was doing exactly what he needed to do. And Powell's like, no, this is what we're doing. Which is exactly what the Trump administration wants to do. And yet on a daily basis, every day, Trump goes out there and beats Powell over the head because interest rates are too high. I'm like, yeah, but he's also killing the ECB and the Bank of England at the same time. So yeah, I think you're crying crocodile tears over here, Don, but that's just me. So like, it couldn't be clearer The United States and the Federal Reserve are moving in this way. And I really do believe also that the Federal Reserve itself is not just under attack, but is on the verge of being reformed in a fundamental way to serve the American domestic economy and the dollar differently than it has since the Banking Act of 1935, which would be now 90 years. That's my supposition. I don't know that it's true, but it's something I put out into the zeitgeist for people to consider and watch the evolution of, because the framework I see in the future is no longer to have an omnipotent Fed like the Bank of England that destroys the currency and intervenes everywhere and acts as bank regulator and all of these things, when all I really want it to be is the lender of last resort in the American credit markets for when a company or a bank gets in trouble to, keep the contagion minimized and enforce the par value of a dollar to the offshore, to the global markets, defend the currency, keep the domestic economy from the credit markets from seizing up. The Fed shouldn't do anything more than that. And with our own debt indexing rate, with our own effectively market rate, not completely, but more market rate than we've had in the past, the secured overnight financing rate, where we get the price dollars domestically based on our supply and demand and needs for dollars, ensures that London no longer has any control over the value of our currency. And why we as Americans tolerated this shit for the last 100 and some odd years is insane. So yeah, the British are a little upset about this, and that's why we're seeing brush fires geopolitically all around the world. That's why there's a war in Ukraine, by the way. That's why there was a war between Israel and Iran that lasted 12 days. That's why President Aliyev in Azerbaijan is trying to start a war on Russian southern flank in the Caspian Sea. It's why all of these things are happening. It's why there's always, whenever peace threatens to break out in India, between India and Pakistan, amazingly, 3 days later, somebody dies. And there's always an MI6 guy leaving the scene with a gin and tonic in one hand and a Walther PPK in the other.
Okay, so one is the
and you should know this better than I do, but we're all victims of these friggin' people. So at the end of the day, there's one last thing, one last joke before I go. All of this nonsense has a particularly limey odor. And let's just leave it at that. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, Sree. And it's just so obvious at this point. And
very true, very true. Actually,
and we can stop it. It's easy.
India is coming up with its own version of SOFR, although still there are many that are based on LIBOR. So I have been flagging this there. Once I heard you 2-3 months ago about this, I said, wait a minute, I have to say this thing. A lot of people in the Indian decision-making circles watch our videos, and I'm sure many of you got enriched by the wisdom and knowledge that we've got today. We're going to do more such sessions with Tom. I'm going to put in the next request right away. When you come back from vacation, you will see, okay, she wants me on this topic, because you have actually touched upon something that makes me ask more questions, but this is already a lot of time. You have to pack, you have to go for a vacation. So last question.
I want to ask you a question. So did I hear you correctly that India is actually working to implement its own version of SOFR?
Yes.
Oh, that's the best news I've heard all week.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's MIMOFR or something like that. Look, I'll send you the link, all right? I have
Please
to go back.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much. Okay.
Yes. So also the SWIFT system of moving money around the world is also going to take a beating once stablecoin becomes mainstream, isn't it?
Agreed. SWIFT is already antiquated. It's already being deprecated, like all the way around the world. The Fed is trying to, coming up with a digital payment layer for its transactions behind the scenes, because it needs something. It needs a better system. We all need a better system. Again, what I've outlined with Tether, what I've outlined, and even in bare bones with Ripple and other systems like that, it's all changing. Like SWIFT was always the Achilles heel of the old global system. It was necessary originally. Now it's a depreciating asset. And the one thing that I've been thinking about this a lot recently, especially in terms of like American political assets of our foreign enemies that are littered all across our Congress and the Senate. When I was thinking about, things like Hamas and even the Iran-Israel conflict, to a lesser extent, even Ukraine, when you see them as puppets of a once removed or even twice removed puppet master, you realize that the puppet master has a balance sheet and he has a bunch of assets in play. Those assets, like all assets, they depreciate over time. I mean, your house depreciates, all of our stuff depreciates. I mean, unless it's like our stoneware, like this cup's going to be the exact same as 1,000 years from now as it is today, right? But very few assets don't depreciate to zero, right? I mean, this microphone, this shirt, again, at the end of the day. Well, the same thing goes for intelligence assets, human assets, organizational assets, and everything else. So when you look at it that way, SWIFT was a rapidly depreciating asset. What do you do with a rapidly depreciating asset? You use it or you lose it. So this is why the first time Obama threatened the Swiss with SWIFT expulsion back in 2010 over not quote unquote their bank secrecy over Nazi banking records, which is all nonsense. We should have been looking at it from that perspective back then. I didn't. I remember when it happened, but now that I'm thinking about it, clearly that was the beginning of the end of SWIFT. Not just I understood that it was the beginning of the end of SWIFT, but from the perspective of the people who created SWIFT, they had to use it because it was at its maximum power. When they finally kicked Iran in December of 2011 out of SWIFT to get them to negotiate the 𝗥𝗘𝗄𝗖, which is what it was. That's what that was about. And Iran said, "Do your worst," and then survived. That really started the process of depreciating SWIFT as an asset. The digital payment technology was now nascent and building over the next 10 or 15 years. But yeah, so SWIFT is one of those things that's rapidly becoming just an uninteresting part of the conversation. There's a lot of things like that are happening around the world. And that's so now when you, in that moment, now you have to think, okay, what are they going to replace it with? How are they going to have the meet the new boss, same as the old boss scenario, right? Where SWIFT is dead, long live SWIFT kind of thing. Well, that's what we're trying to figure out today. And the British have their ideas. The European Union have their ideas. The United States clearly has its ideas. The Russians and the Chinese, they have their ideas. India has some ideas as well. And that's a good thing in the end. And it's going to be the technology that is least controlled by any one person that's probably going to win. And in the long run, that's why Bitcoiners are nearly religious fanatics, because they really do believe that Bitcoin is an incorruptible asset. And maybe they're right. I would like to believe that they're right, but I always leave just a small amount of doubt. No matter how convinced I am of something, I always leave a small amount of doubt in case I'm wrong, because I don't have perfect information. None of us do.
Thank you so much, Tom. And viewers, will be coming back to the stablecoin and its adoption across the world in the next series of talks that we'll have with him. And this will happen in a week's time. I'm hoping that you all will like this series. It's a little bit perhaps not as relevant as many other day-to-day events, but this is your future. That's how I want you to think about it. Spend some time, listen to this. Also, if you want to know a little bit about the history of Federal Reserve, listen to Martin Armstrong. Some of the best talks that he has given, and I'm hoping to have him also on our show very soon with with luck. So thank you so much, Tom, and we'll be back again with you. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Bye.